Great, thank you, Fred. And like I said, we're going down the panel and open up for Q&A afterwards as we can pose them the questions that we think are the good, tough questions to ask. Steve, I'm going to go to you and talk a little bit from the community perspective as well as your involvement with SATAI and the Chamber. Sort of your views on where we're going as a nexus or a hotbed of this kind of technology commercialization.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and I am going to take this from somewhat of a unique perspective. I'm not a serial investor. I'm not an expert in any particular technology as an entrepreneur, but as a volunteer and working for a corporation, I've seen some of the anchors that are in place in San Antonio, and so I'd like to take a few minutes to walk through that, if I will. I did mention, I think you mentioned that I worked for AT&T and I was involved with SATAI and that I also was part of the Chamber, but what you failed to mention is I just got back from Vancouver. In case you didn't recognize me, I was a snowboarder on the half pipe. So that's why if you see me walking and you see that little hitch in my giddy up, it's because I didn't quite do so well. But I did hit the wall, thank you. I think everybody in the room here knows, just especially from what we saw, the history in San Antonio, that innovation is a never-ending process. I think that the opportunities are endless, and I think it's just a matter of bridging the gap of these folks that have ideas, turning it into an innovative process, if you will, and hooking them up with investors. As chairman of SATAI, what I can explain, what I can tell you is that well, first of all, how many of you know SATAI? How many of you have been involved in SATAI? That's a wonderful thing, because if you think of the history of SATAI, in the very beginning, David Spencer, you remember, it was from the ground floor up. It was a very little brand recognition kind of thing. Just in the 2009 alone, SATAI has served 233 clients. We've hosted several events. In fact, an event that had over 300 participants in October, and the very topic of that event was innovation in itself. Many of you probably were in that room. We've hosted or participated in 48 other events. We served 31 portfolio clients in 2009. There's been 465 client pitches just in the calendar year in 2009. Those were to various investor opportunities. 14 of the 31 portfolio companies received funding in 2009. And what's interesting is of the 14, the 17 that did not receive funding, that doesn't mean that they're closed out. They're still in the pipeline, many of them. Of the 14, life sciences leads much of that, but there's growth that's anticipated in the IT, cyber, green, and military spaces, and I think SATAI is well positioned to hit those sectors as well. What's it translate to? Just in 2009 alone, there was $32 million raised. What's interesting to note is over $160 million has been raised, either through seed, VC, or through things like ETF. From 2003 to 2009, $160 million. There have been 20 of the 31 portfolio companies have hired new employees here in San Antonio, so it's a real direct economic impact to the city of San Antonio. So much so, the direct economic impact is $290 million. I think that SATAI can do more, however, and I think as a volunteer, and what I'll talk about from a chamber perspective here in just a moment, is the power of a volunteer is endless. The volunteers that work with SATAI staff, folks that have received funding in the past, that have brought potential entrepreneurs to the table, I think will help us grow even further. So I would encourage you to use SATAI as an asset. If you haven't been affiliated with them of recent, get re-engaged. If you haven't been to the SATAI booth, they will have a booth out here tomorrow, fully manned by the staff, and it's just a very, I'm very encouraged and very enthusiastic about the potential that SATAI has. Whether the economic climate was bad or not in the last 12, 18 months, it doesn't matter. SATAI has still had a measure of success. Moving quickly to the Chamber, many of you are probably familiar with the fact that the Chamber is there to foster competitiveness and growth in many, many sectors. The 2010 primary agenda is to put San Antonio on the map. When you look at the history that we saw just recently, well, let's talk about Cyber City, USA. San Antonio is well positioned to be the national center of excellence for cybersecurity and for cyber operations. That doesn't mean that San Diego and Maryland and everybody else that's involved in security doesn't have their play. But when you look at some of the pillars to cybersecurity and cyber operations, we've got the 24th Air Force that moved here last year. We certainly believe that that's going to further expand. There's $1 billion plus that potentially would be direct economic impact just in that alone. We have major influences from local colleges and universities. A lot of people don't know this, but we have ITSA taking it from the high school level, trying to get kids engaged in IT-related programs or cyber-related programs, security-related programs. When these kids come out of high school, they look for a vocation or they're looking for a university, we now have major cyber degree programs right here in San Antonio. So when these kids come out of college and they become entrepreneurs in the making in the cyberspace, where are they going to go? We want them to stay here in San Antonio. So the educational pillar is certainly there. When it comes to the business investment, a lot of people don't know this. There's 81 businesses in San Antonio that are affiliated or directly involved in the cyberspace. And that's growing. We're getting more and more companies that are wanting to move here. The NSA, the Homeland Security, Accenture just based some of their cyber operations here. So I'm very encouraged by that. Finally, I have a unique perspective from an AT&T corporate level. In my 28 years of experience, I can honestly tell you that when you have a 300,000 employee base, many of those 300,000 employees are entrepreneurs in themselves. And so one of the challenges, even as a large corporation, is to tap that resource, that talent, and to be able to channel a lot of these ideas, turn them into innovations. I'm proud to say that our company, as large as we are, as successful as we have been, we have put in a place where we take technology ideas and we put them through a vetting system. And that vetting system is very much like a startup company. They go through a committee of venture capital related folks, people that are in the business of making decisions of whether to give money. And only a certain percentage of those go through various rounds of investment, and that's in a large corporation. So when you look at 5 to 10% of the overall ideas that we take in a year, those get through the filtering system, and that's how we spend our capital dollars at AT&T. So from a startup to a large company to a chamber that is very much filled with some phenomenal volunteers that are cyber experts, retired from the military, if you will. I am very encouraged by what I see right here in San Antonio, and I hope that you are as well.